If you were an Amora.
Starving, how could you relax?
Exactly. Ask my kind. Ask my kind. All right, good. So the answer is going to be, the Talmud addresses it. What's the reason we do this? We do this because we want you to be hungry for the matzah and eat the matzah with gusto. Okay? Good. But is there any other questions you have? I'll tell you the question the Talmud asks. Why does it say Passover you can't eat from the afternoon until nightfall? Don't we know that all the time, like on Shabbos, before Shavuot, before Sukkot, you should always not eat in preparation of the holiday? That's the question that I just spoiled it, but that's going to be the big question of the Talmud. We'll talk about that soon. Next, at the Seder, we eat reclining. Any questions? Go. You are a Talmudic sage right now. Congratulations. What is your question?
Rabbi,
How do we recline?
How do you recline? Very good. Which way? Right, left, all the way down 45 degrees? Yes. Amanda, did you ask something? Who asked me something?
yeah, but my question was from the previous one.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question about the word avoid. I just think it's an interesting word choice. It, to me, implies not really a command. A different word choice would make it more, you cannot eat, just saying avoid.
You know what? First of all, the question's a good one because that's the kind of question a Talmudic sage would ask about the language. I'm looking in the Mishnah, it says refrain. And then I'm looking at the Hebrew, lo yachal, one is not allowed. So I would say that this translation in the exercise is written very shorthanded and it is not accurate. It's not how the Mishnah would write something, put it that way, right?
Well, refrain is more accurate. Yeah, that's definitely.
Yeah, and lo yachal is you're not able to, you're not allowed. Okay, so that was a good question. Anyone else? So how do you recline? I'll ask you more questions. When do you recline? When you eat the maror? When you eat the chicken soup? When you eat the brisket? At the dessert? When do you recline? The Mishnah doesn't tell us. The rabbis have a lot of questions here, right? Okay, let's keep.
What if you can't recline?
What if you can't recline? There are people that can't recline. So, and some people, right? So that's a good question.
At the time of the drafting, reclining was considered a mark of luxury. So
Yeah.
we do something that's the equivalent of modern luxury instead.
Right. Right.
Also,
Today we don't recline when we eat necessarily. I hear you. What was that question?
also, like, is there a specific degree of reclining that it's supposed to be proper?
Right. And these are questions the Talmud would ask. Let's keep going. At the Seder, we drink 4 cups of wine. Any questions?
What type of wine?
What type of wine? What color wine? That's actually, it's supposed to be a deep red color, ideally, is the tradition.
Why 4 cups?
What?
Why 4 cups?
Why 4 cups? What happens if you're AA program? Can you drink grape juice? Right? Okay. By the way, I'll tell you.
What's the timing of the drinks? Like, how far apart do you space the 4 cups?
Exactly. Are you supposed to just gobble 4 cups and then you're trashed for the Seder? Or is this at the end of the Seder? Great question. By the way, I'll tell you one of the questions that Talmud asks that I don't expect you to know because it's something I didn't know. The Talmudic sages at that point ask, but don't we know you're not supposed to do things in pairs? There's like a, what's it called when people are superstitious Talmudic teaching? You don't do things in pairs, 2s, 4s, 8s, whatever. Don't you know that? Now, you don't know that, and I didn't even know that because we do things in pairs. But in the Talmud times, they didn't. And why, what that's all about, it's a bad omen. Okay, that's another class, not something I'm going to cover right now. However, that's the question of the Talmud. And the Talmud answers, the answer is because the Passover is known to be Leil Shimurim. Leil Shimurim is the night of protection. In fact, there's some people that don't lock their doors on Passover night. True story. This is the night that God protects the Jewish people. Doors are unlocked. All right. You know the story about the guy, the family who opened the door for Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet? Yeah. And suddenly they opened the door and they almost fainted. There was a man with a long white beard and a big and a white robe. And he walked in and he said, I would like to bless this family. They almost fell off their chairs. Elijah the prophet is here. And so he says, let me give everyone a koshel bracha, a blessing of wine. And he gave everyone a couple drops of wine, and they all drank the wine from Eliyahu Hanavi. And they woke up 24 hours later and all the silver was gone from the house. Anyway, that's a joke. But I know, terrible story. But it's known as Leil Shimurim, the night of protection. So the sages say you don't have to worry about doubles. 4 is okay. By the way, another thing, the reason we have 4, it celebrates the mothers of the Jewish people, the Jewish women, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. They represent the Jewish people went out of Egypt on the merit of the faith of the Jewish women in particular, not the Jewish men. Sorry, guys. The Jewish women, in last week's Torah portion, we read that Miriam, Moshe's sister, led the Jewish women in song with tambourines and musical instruments through the splitting of the sea on the dry land. And the sages say, where do they get musical instruments from? And the answer is that the women actually put musical instruments by their door because every day they believed that they were going to be freed. And meanwhile, the men, when Moses came to say, God's going to free you, they didn't even hear what he said. Okay, anyway, so this is a lot of kind of stuff the Talmud goes on. I'm going to go to the next one. Public food banks must provide poor people with 4 cups of wine. The Talmud asks, isn't it obvious? No, the Talmud said it's not obvious. The Mishnah has to say it. Why? Because Rabbi Akiva, one of the great sages, would famously dissuade poor people from from taking money to buy food for Shabbat and holidays. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, fine. You could take, you're poor, you could take money from the food bank, but don't take your Shabbos food and your Yom Tov food. Why? Because when you buy that food with your money, it brings blessings to you. You don't want to miss that. Save your pennies for Shabbos and Yom Tov and buy it yourself and earn those special blessings, right? This is what Rabbi Akiva teaches. So the Talmud says, yeah, you have to tell us that they should get 4 cups of wine from the food bank, because Rabbi Akiva would tell them normally for holidays they shouldn't, but for Passover, don't be a hero. You could take the 4 cups of wine from the food bank. All right? What I'm giving you right now is like, this is like freestyle. Just like we looked at one Mishnah and we're just like breaking apart so many discussions. What I'm talking about covers hundreds of pages perhaps, and goes into a lot more detail. But I'm trying to get our feet wet. Okay. Beis Hillel teaches that when we recite Kiddush, the wine blessing is recited before the festival, and Beis Shammai insists on the reverse.
Would you mind sharing that text while you're talking? It might be helpful. I'm at work and I don't have the textbook with me.
Yeah, so we did read it already, but this is a synopsis. Beis Hillel teaches that when you recite the blessing for Kiddush, first you bless the wine, then you bless the holiday. Beis Shammai says, no, first you bless the holiday of Passover, then the wine. We'll talk about that more. But the Talmud has a lot of questions. Okay. Fine. And one of the things the Talmud is going to want to know is, why does Beis Shammai say this and why does Beis Hillel say that? Like, what's the reasoning? Okay. In order to know the answer to that question, my friends, I am going to present to you a new keyword that you need for Talmud study. All right, you ready? You have all the keywords until now? Here's another one for your repertoire. Page 82. Term is 3.2. Key term 3.2. Braita, or I say as an Ashkenazi, Brisa. Brisa is an external material, a teaching of the sages of this Naic period that were excluded from the body of the Mishnah. All right, so here's what we said. Last week we said Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi thought very carefully when he wrote the Mishnah because he was doing something that wasn't allowed. He was writing down the oral Torah, right? So he wrote it so concise, and he only put important information that he felt is what needs to be preserved. Now, around that time, he wasn't the only one writing notes. There were other rabbis of the Mishnah. Remember, they're called Tanaim. They're from the year 200. You can't really mess with the Tanaim. If they say something, you have to take a side. You can't come up with a third opinion. They're close to the source. There were other Tanaim that said things that weren't written in the Mishnah. Maybe they ended up on scraps of paper or written on the margins of books. Maybe there's scrolls that were found. Maybe maybe some of the information is not accurate. But it is other texts, Mishnah-like texts, that didn't quite make it into the official Mishnah. Now, what do we do with that? The rabbis love brisas, because the brisas many times give us more information that you don't see in the Mishnah itself. And while a brisa is not viewed with the same strength or authority as a Mishnah is, it's used as a valid source to get more information. And in today's class, we're going to get really deep on debating over questions. And the sages are going to say, you want to know why I present this theory? Because I found this brisa. It was in the bottom of the bookshelf. It was written by a Tana. And I'm going to use this as evidence. And the rabbis are going to decide if the brisa is legit or not legit. Okay? So now you know what a brisa is. And by the way, let me share the screen with you, just catch up a little bit over here. Share. Perfect. Oh, hold on a second. I really should record this.
Recording in progress.
Okay, I thought. Welcome, class number 3, lesson number 3 in decoding the Talmud. We are now introducing the class by introducing something called a brisa. We said a brisa is not a Mishnah, but they are notes that were from the Mishnah times that didn't make it into the final Mishnah text, and the sages used the brisa to analyze the Mishnah and see if there's any missing information. All right, let's look at the screen over here. We just had an exercise where we read text, the Mishnah in text number 1. And after reading the Mishnah, I asked the class to act like Amoraim, which are the rabbis of the Mishnah for that era. And I asked them to ask questions on the Mishnah. And when the first question we asked was, on Passover Eve, we avoid eating from Mincha until nightfall. The question was, why does this apply only to Passover? Doesn't it apply to all holidays? And then at the Seder, we eat reclining. And then we asked, which part of the Seder do you eat reclining? The brisket, the matzah, the maror, right? These are questions the Talmud would ask. And then at the Seder, we drink 4 cups of wine. And the Talmud asks, well, doesn't this contradict the famous, teaching of not doing things in pairs, which we say may have been a superstitious practice in the times of the Mishnah? And then we said, it's Passover is a day of protection, so we don't have to worry about these laws. All right. Then we said, isn't it obvious that you should drink, that the poor person should take money from a food bank for the 4 cups of wine? And we said, no, it's not obvious, Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva said that one should not take money from a food bank for Shabbos and holidays. For Tuesday, Wednesday, for Sunday, that's fine. But for holiday, you want the mitzvah of providing money, your own money for the mitzvah. So, but Rabbi Akiva would say on Passover, don't be a hero, take money from the food bank. And then finally, what's the reasoning between the two opinions of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel? They argue the order of making the kiddush on the cup of wine at the Seder. Beis Hillel says first you bless the wine, then the Passover, and then Beis Shammai says no, you bless the Passover, then you bless the wine. What's the reasoning? These are the questions Talmud would ask. And those that are in the class, you guys did a great job asking these and many more questions, acting like a Talmudic sage. Okay, and you could freeze this screen, or you could look in your book and you could see all the answers I just gave you on page 80. All right. We just explained what a brisa is. We said a brisa means outside. Brisas are teachings from the Tanaim, which are they lived in the times of the Mishnah. But these teachings are not included in the Mishnah, but it gives us additional context. All right, here's something really cool that you could add to your Talmudic knowledge base. When the Talmud quotes a Mishnah, it uses the language Tanan, we taught. But when the Talmud produces a brisa to prove something, it says Tanya, which means, and it was taught. Or sometimes it says Tanu Rabbanan, our rabbis taught. So if you see these words when you're studying Mishnah, Talmud, it's very important. If it says Tanan, we taught, that's a Mishnah. We, meaning we all accept it. It's in the Mishnah. This is accepted. We taught. But when it says Tanya, it means it was taught. It's a brisa. It's information. It's not necessarily the law. It's not necessarily authentic. Some brisas weren't verified, but we want this info. It's less commonly known. Biblical derivatives, alternate opinions, reasoning, context, all that is found in the brisa. Oh, good news, friends. I am going to share with you a video. And in this video, you're going to get a little taste of what a brisa is. We're going to see how the Talmud uses a brisa to give us more information. And in order to do this, we have to look at the Mishnah again. We're now at page 84. We read this Mishnah before, but we're going to do it again because I need you to focus on the last paragraph. Remember, it says, when they pour him the first cup of wine, according to Beis Shammai, he should first bless over the festival and then bless over the wine. According to Beis Hillel, he should first recite a blessing over the wine and then over the festival. The Talmud wants to know why. That's what the Talmud wants to know. Why? Why do these rabbis have these opinions? Please pay attention to the screen to find out.
The world is conducted with divine attention to each detail. The Creator expects similar precision in our Torah observance. Even sequencing is significant. The Passover night meal begins with Kiddush, blessings recited over wine. Wine. We thank God for creating grapes that enable wine production. Festival. We thank God for sanctifying us as His people and giving us His sacred laws and joyous festivals, including Passover, the season of our freedom. Occasion. We thank God for keeping us alive to experience this occasion. Shabbat. If it's a Saturday night, we thank God for illuminating fire and the separate roles of Shabbat and weekdays. In the first century, the Jewish sages debated the sequence of the blessings. Their debate appears in a Baraita, a text that records rabbinic teachings from the Mishnaic era. The debate was between two academies, Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai, founded by two great sages of the 1st century BCE. Bet Shammai says, first recite the festival blessing and then thank God for wine. Bet Hillel says that's backwards. First recite the wine blessing and then thank God for the festival. Now the Bereta transcript also records their logic. Bet Shammai hooks two logical weights to its view. Number one, wine is an unusual way to begin a meal. We go straight for the cup on Passover night only to honor God's festival. So the festival causes the requirement for wine, and the festival should have priority. That makes sense, but Bet Hillel has a comeback. Agreed, the festival is primary to the wine, but we are now focused on the Kiddush, and it's the wine that causes the Kiddush. No wine, no Kiddush. So we begin with the wine blessing. But wait, Bet Shammai are not done. Number two, when you receive a gift, you say thank you. Here we have two gifts, a sanctified time and beautiful wine. Which arrives first? Passover begins at sunset, long before our nighttime meal. Shouldn't we express gratitude for the first gift before thanking God for the second gift? Can Bet Hillel counter that argument? Certainly. Why look at the context of a few hours to find the correct sequence? That's ignoring a major principle, the rule of frequency. Let me give you an example. Jewish males wear a tallit for prayers. They also wear tefillin. Which of these items is put on first? The answer is the tallit. Why? The rule of frequency. How often is a tallit worn? Every day. How often are tefillin worn? On weekdays only, not on Shabbat. Let's see. How often are tefillin worn? On weekdays only, not on Shabbat or festivals. So we bow to frequency and put on the tallit first. Getting back to Passover, which is more frequent, wine drinking or Passover? You can drink wine several times a day and recite hundreds of wine blessings a year. But Passover Eve is once a year. There are only 3 annual festivals and 50-odd Shabbats. The rule of frequency favors the wine. The final decision of Jewish law was set in favor of Bet Hillel. We begin with a brief thanks for the wine and move on to a long, beautiful blessing for Passover and for the precision-filled role we play in God's greater plan.
All right. Congratulations. You just experienced a visual discussion of Gemara using a brisa to give us more information. If you remember, the Mishnah just said the ruling of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel didn't tell us why. The brisa gave us reasoning. Because there's no other brisas, the sages say we're going to rely on that brisa to explain to us more context for what the reasoning of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, and they'll use that information to compare and learn other lessons as well. So let's go to page 87. And exercise 3.2, just to break down what we just learned. Review the above brisa, text number 3, with a starting partner, and in your own words, fill in the first and second arguments for each school of thought. So you watch the video. Hopefully you could do this right now. So Beis Shammai, now we're talking about the cup of wine that you bless at the Seder, and you're making the Kiddush. Do you first bless the wine, or do you first bless the holiday? So what does Beis Shammai say? He says you first bless the holiday. Why? There's 2 arguments. Does anyone want to jump in here? The first argument, or the first reason. He says, because wine is only drunk because we're celebrating a holiday. Why are you drinking wine today? By the way, this is how you're supposed to hold the cup when you make Kiddush, in your palm. Like this. I don't know, people don't know that sometimes. They hold the cup like this. I know you're asking why, but that's not what this class is for, but we could come back to it another time. Anyway, so the first argument of Beis Shammai is why are we drinking wine? Because it's Passover. So what should we bless first? Bless Passover, then the wine. Passover comes first. And he gives another reasoning. He says, the holiday begins before the wine is drunk. right? The holiday begins when the sun sets. The wine is drunk, later at the night when you sit down for the Seder. So bless the holiday first. Is it good logic? Very good logic. But hold on, Beis Hillel comes in and says, no, first bless the wine, not the holiday. And he says, why? The first argument is because the Kiddush could not be recited without wine. You're making Kiddush now. If you didn't have wine, you can't make Kiddush. And then he gives another answer, which is the home run, and he says there's a law in Judaism. The thing you do more frequently is the thing that comes first. So since Kiddush is made on Shabbat, and it's made on other holidays, and on Passover, that is the frequency makes it more chashuv, and makes it more special. All right, congratulations, everyone. You just experienced the Talmud using Brisa for information. All right, next, I'm going to teach you a new word. Page 98, key term 3.3. Another word for your, I could have shown you this over here. Sorry, guys. Another word for your Talmudic arsenal. Here's the word, sugyas, that's plural, or sugya, singular. A sugya is when you ask a question in the Talmud, and then you debate it back and forth to try to find an answer. A sugya could have one question, and there's a bunch of back and forth questions and proofs that are brought. The Gemara is not a book of law. Remember that. The Talmud, the Mishnah is a book of law. The Gemara is a book that questions the Mishnah to understand it better. What questions is the sugya attempting to answer? That's the first thing you need to know every time you sit down to learn Talmud. Before you get carried away with all the questions and debates, and which we're going to do very soon, you always have to remember what's the original question. Okay. But first a joke, because I didn't give you any jokes yet. And I don't want to lose anyone. I know some of you are only here for the jokes. So the story is told about the mayor of a certain village came to the rabbi and said, I'd love to understand your religion a little better. Rabbi said, sure, come spend the Shabbos with me. And the mayor said, great. So he stayed at the rabbi's house. First, before Shabbos even began, the sun was setting. Some neighbors came over to the rabbi and said, Rabbi, before we go to shul, let's do a bain. Let's have a l'chaim. So they had a couple of shots, a couple of l'chaims. Okay, they're in the mood of Shabbos. Then they went to shul. They prayed. After they prayed, they went to the social hall and they filled up a cup of wine and they made kiddush for whoever was there. L'chaim, l'chaim. And then they went home. The mayor came to the house with the rabbi and the family. They filled up another cup of wine and they made kiddush. L'chaim, l'chaim. And at the meal, he pulled out a little schnapps, a little bourbon. They made a l'chaim, l'chaim. But then there were so many people around the table, you know, that if you have a minyan, you're supposed to make your birchat hamazon, you bless the bread, you're blessing on the meal at the end. You're supposed to do it over a cup of wine. Another cup of wine, l'chaim. The next day they went to shul, and after davening, they went down to the kiddush. And they made kiddush, another cup of wine, l'chaim, and then they had l'chaims, l'chaim, and then they went home and he made kiddush for his family and they made l'chaim. And then at the end of Shabbos, we all know you're supposed to make havdalah, which is we say goodbye to Shabbos, and you make havdalah over a cup of, you got it, wine, l'chaim. At the end of the Shabbos, the mayor said, thank you for this very beautiful experience to spend Shabbos with your community, Shabbos with your family. There's some things that now I understand, and there's some things I still don't understand. And the rabbi says, please explain. He says, I still don't understand why you can't flip a light switch on Shabbos. I don't get it. I listened to everything you did, your prayers. I don't get it why you can't flip a light switch. But I totally understand why you don't drive on Shabbos. Anyway, okay. So we're talking about the wine and the blessing. Page 89. All right, we're looking at the Mishnah again. One must refrain from eating on the eve of Passover from close to the time for reciting the Mincha prayer until after darkness has fallen. When is Mincha? We know that Jewish people are supposed to pray. Show me how many times are you supposed to pray? Who knows the answer? Very good. 3 times a day. Beautiful. You're with me. Mincha is the afternoon prayer. The time of Mincha is approximately 9.5 hours after sunset, 2.5 hours before 9.5 hours after sunrise, approximately 2.5 hours before sunset. So I need my mathematicians to help me out now. If sunset is 6 o'clock, when is the time of Mincha? 2.5 hours earlier? 3:30. So it would seem from this Mishnah that you can't eat before Passover because we want you to eat the matzah with gusto. You can't eat it from about 3:30. No eating food. I know Sandra is very concerned as a Jewish mother and grandmother. She's very, very concerned about what's going to be. You'll be hungry. They'll eat your chicken soup with the matzah balls. Don't worry. They'll be very hungry. Okay. Fine. By the way, it actually comes out, and I don't want to mix you up, but I'm going to use the time of 3:30, but it actually works out to be 4:30 because of daylight savings. Because we add an hour. Or no, we fall back an hour. No. It comes out to be 4:30. Fine. Here's another word you need. By the way, after you got this word, your toolbox is full, and we're going to get into the real fun part of this class. Page 90. Diuk. What is a diuk? Diuk means precision. Precision. A diuk is when you look at the words exactly, and you want to know why the words are written precisely that way. Amanda asked about the diuk of the translation that we had earlier in the book, and we found out the book wasn't a good translation. But your question was a question on diuk, on the precision of a textual nuance. All right, you want to know what diuk is? So when you study Talmud, you have to know the word diuk. Diuk means that you're examining a nuance in the text of the Mishnah or the Torah. And it reminds me of a joke. There was a fellow who decided to open a new store. He was going to sell fish. So he went to make a sign. And he goes to the sign maker. He says, give me a big sign that says, fresh fish sold here. And the guy gives him an estimate. Here, it's going to be whatever it is, $500. He says, $500 for a sign? He says, yeah, I charge you by the letter. This is the size of your sign. This is what's going to cost you. He says, I can't pay so much money. He says, let me think about this. Fresh fish sold here. Obviously, I'm selling the fish here, right? So why don't you just say fresh fish sold? He gives him a new estimate. The guy's like, I don't know. This is still a lot of money. Then he thinks to himself, fresh fish sold? Sold? What, we're not giving fish away for free. Who's giving free fish? Just make a sign, fresh fish. So the guy gives him a new estimate. He's like, oh my gosh, this is still too expensive. So he thinks to himself, fresh fish. do you have to say the fish is fresh? I mean, obviously, if you're going to sell fish, you're not going to sell rotten fish, right? So he says, just give me a sign that says fish. All right. And the guy gives him an estimate. And he looks at the estimate and he says, yeah, do I really need a sign that says fish? When you walk down the street, you're going to smell the fish. Of course you know I sell fish. Anyway, this joke is not so much of a joke when you study Talmud, because Talmud looks at every letter in the Mishnah and the Torah and says, why does it say this? Why doesn't it say that? What do you need this word for? If the word is here, it's teaching us something. That's called diuk. Now you learned a new word in your Talmudic repertoire of words. Okay. Text number 4, every word of the Mishnah was precisely weighed and measured. Hence, even the most far-reaching conclusions may be drawn not only from the wording of the Mishnah, but also from the way it uses language, from the expressions that the Mishnah could have used but did not use, and from the order in which things are mentioned. All these elements comprise the basis for the characteristic Talmudic study called diuk, precision. And now, before we really jump in, my friends, I need you to jump on the bandwagon with me here. You got to be with the program. And what that means is, two things. It means two things. One is you got to accept that the author of the Mishnah made deliberate choice in the wording. Okay? If you remember the question we asked before, the question was, why does it say on Passover you can't eat before Passover? Don't we know you can't eat before all holidays and Shabbat? So if you're not a seasoned Talmudic scholar, you'd be like, I don't know why the rabbi of the Mishnah said Passover. Maybe he was thinking about Passover that day, so he said it as a suggestion, as like a word that popped into his head. No. Stop. Rewind. You're not thinking. You're not in the game of Talmud. If you think that the rabbi said a word in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi said a teaching in the Mishnah, and he said, used the example of Passover, and it was just a random example, no. You're not going to be able to study Talmud. You got to, as they say, you got to be in the game. You got to know that every word is important. And the other thing is, if there's a question in the Talmud, my friends, it needs to bother you. It needs to keep you up at night. Learning isn't just about the laws. It's about working out the details of God's will. If there's a question that you have in the Talmud and you don't have an answer, you're pacing your bedroom back and forth and you're saying, I can't sleep. You actually care. If you want to get into the heads of a Talmudic scholar, they actually care. Why? Who cares? You say this blessing first. You say that blessing first. Who cares? Whatever. So you say blessings. No. The Talmudic scholar says, I believe that God is giving me instructions. He wills something of me, and I want to know what God wants from me. And there's no just random, we just do it. It's no such thing, we do this because our bubbies and zadis did it. That's not what a Talmudic scholar, the way he thinks. He or she is programmed to say, I want to know what God wants from me. And it bothers me if I don't know the answer. Even if you don't really care, and you're like, Rabbi, I really don't care, I need you at least to pretend to care so that you could get into the game of Talmud for the next 35 minutes of this class. All right. And I think by the time we're done, you might actually care. All right. Take a little sip of coffee, wake up, because you're going to need every single brain cell right now. We are going to dive into a sugya of the Talmud. The first thing is we have to know what the question is, and I'll tell you what the question is. We said that you're not allowed to eat from mincha until nightfall before Passover, and the question is, why does it say before Passover? Don't we know you're not supposed to eat before Shabbos, and you're not supposed to eat before any holiday? That's the question. Text number 5, page 92. This is the question of the Talmud. Why does it specify that the eve of Passover, even the eve of Shabbos and other holiday festivals, also trigger this prohibition? For we learned in a brisa, drum roll, a brisa has been produced. One of the rabbis came running and said, I have a brisa that has more information. Okay, it's not a Mishnah. What's it say? One should not eat on the eve of Shabbos or of festivals from the time of Mincha and onward, so that one enters the Shabbos or festival with an appetite. This is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Oh, we just learned about a new rabbi, Rabbi Yehuda. He taught us that before Shabbos, before holidays like Sukkot or Shavuot, you're not allowed to eat. So you should be hungry when you sit down for the festival meal. Conversely, Rabbi Yossi says that one may continue eating until it grows dark. There's another rabbi. He's a more chill rabbi. His name is Rabbi Yossi. And Rabbi Yossi says, guys, relax. You could eat the whole day as long as it didn't get dark yet. The sun didn't set yet. You could eat all day. So it's before Passover. You finish cleaning your house. You're getting ready to set up for the Seder, and you're hungry. And you're like, I want a coffee and a macaroon. So we know the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda is you're never allowed to eat from Mincha and onwards. Rabbi Yossi says, yeah, have the macaroon, just don't eat it once the sun sets. Once the sun sets, then stop eating. So that's the Mishnah. That's the Gemara. The Gemara has a very good question. Why does the Mishnah specify that you can't eat before Passover? Specifically Passover. Isn't it well known that you can't eat before any holiday or Shabbos? Now, some of us might say, I don't know, Rabbi, who cares? No. Get in the game. Get in the game. If the Mishnah says Passover, it wasn't a mistake. The rabbis were very specific. And we know that you can't eat during any holiday. So what's the purpose of this Mishnah? Maybe it shouldn't be here. And the fact that it's written in the Mishnah means it should be teaching us something. Okay. Before I give you the answer of the Gemara, let's look on page 92 and help me fill out this chart. And you could either text the answer, type the answer, or you could unmute yourself. Okay. So what's the question? May one eat a meal prior to Passover? So now there's two opinions in the Brisa. According to Rabbi Yehuda, he says, on the eve of Passover, can you eat a meal? Yes or no? According to Rabbi Yehuda. What do you say? No. Sandra says no. Very good. You could type the answer. Good. The answer is no. How about on the eve of Shabbos and Yantif? Can you eat? See if I could see. I'm gonna shake your head, yes or no. I want to see if you're with me. No, very good. Good, no. According to Rabbi Yossi, can you eat on the eve of Passover? Yes, very good. Can you eat on the eve of Shabbos and other festivals? Yes, good. You did a good job. You understand the brisa. Very good. And you also understand the question. Question is, why is it, if it's well known that we hold, and by the way, it seems that the Gemara at this point believes the law is like Rabbi Yehuda. So if the law is like Rabbi Yehuda that you never can eat, why is the brisa telling us that you can't eat? It seems to be extra. Okay, that's the question. My friends, the answer is presented now in the Talmud in text number 6 by another rabbi who is an Amora. Remember, this is the rabbis of the Mishnah, of the Talmud, sorry. And his name is Reb Huna. And Reb Huna says, before we read it inside, I'll tell you what he says. Reb Huna says, why are you assuming that the laws are like Reb Yehuda? Like you went into this question assuming that the law is like Rabbi Yehuda, that you can't eat before any holiday. What if the going law is according to Rabbi Yossi, that before Shabbos and other holidays, you are allowed to eat? And if that's the case, well, guess what? Then the Mishnah makes sense because it's going according to Rabbi Yossi, and basically the Mishnah is saying is normally you could eat, but before Passover you can't eat. That's what Rabbi Yossi is trying to tell us in the Mishnah. Let's see it inside. Rav Huna said, text number 6, this distinction between Passover and Shabbos or the other festivals is necessary for Rabbi Yossi, who said one may continue eating until it grows dark. That will apply to the eve of Shabbat and other holidays. But on the eve of Passover, he would concede that it's prohibition due to the obligation to eat the matzah. So Rav Huna answers the question of the Talmud by telling us, your assumption is wrong. You thought this Mishnah is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. The Mishnah is probably the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. And now the Mishnah makes sense. It's actually teaching us something. All right, I know this is complicated stuff, but if you got it, shake your head yes. If you didn't, you could shake your head no, and it's okay. All right. Seems like most of us got it so far. Okay. So we're in the throes of a sugya. We had a question. Rav Huna gave us an answer. Let's fill out the form, exercise 3.4 on 93, just to make sure you guys got this. Now with the Rav Huna's view, we're going to answer the questions a little differently. Okay, the question is, may one eat a meal prior to the holiday? So there's two opinions. According to Rabbi Yehuda, on the eve of Passover, could you eat? No, nothing changed. On the eve of other holidays and Shabbat, could you eat? No. But now we're learning Rabbi Yossi a little differently. According to Rabbi Yossi, on the eve of Passover, can you eat? No, because the Mishnah is his opinion. But on the eve of other festivals and on Shabbos, can you eat? Yes, very good. Beautiful. We answered this burning question. What was the Mishnah teaching us? It was teaching us the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Okay, finally, we could all take our pillow and have a restful night. We answered the burning question of the Mishnah. But wait, my friends. Now comes along another rabbi, Rav Papa. And Rav Papa says, no. Maybe the Mishnah the law is according to Reb Yehuda. But we said then the Mishnah is not teaching us anything. Yes, the Mishnah could still be teaching us something. And Rav Papa says, Rav Papa says, you didn't read the Mishnah and the Brisa carefully, did you? I'm going to share the screen with you to try to explain this. Look at the Mishnah. The Mishnah said one must refrain from eating on the eve of Passover. Look at the words, from close to the time of Mincha. But the Brisa, where we quoted Rabbi Yehuda, said one should not eat on the eves of Shabbos or festivals from the time of Mincha. What's the difference between close to the time and the time? So Rav Papa says, the time of Mincha we established was 3:30, 9.5 hours after sunrise. Close to the time of Mincha would be 3 o'clock. Rav Papa says, let us believe that the law is like Rabbi Yehuda. Oh, but what's the Mishnah teaching us? Very simple. You didn't read the Mishnah carefully. You didn't look at the diuk of the Mishnah. The Mishnah doesn't say from the time of Mincha. It says from close to the time of the Mincha, which would be 3 o'clock. All year, you're never allowed to eat in the afternoon before Shabbos, before holidays from 3:30. But on Passover, because of the matzah, we're extra strict. And this is the theory of Rav Papa. We're extra strict, and you have to stop eating from a half hour earlier, from 9 hours earlier. So now Rav Papa negated Rav Huna's theory. He found a way that the Mishnah could make sense, but he now established that the laws like Rabbi Yehuda, which is a problem for us. That means that you can't eat on afternoons before Shabbos and Yom Tov. But apparently, Rav Papa is a party pooper, and he doesn't want us eating our coffee and our macaroons. And he brought a very logical explanation as to why. Let's see Rav Papa's language in the text, number 794, page 94. Rav Papa says, we could explain the Mishnah in a way that conforms with Rabbi Yehuda's view. The distinction between Passover and other occasions is that there in the case of the eve of Shabbos and other festivals, the prohibition is enforced from the time of Mincha and onward. However, in the proximity to the time of Mincha, eating is still permitted. So you're allowed to eat up to 3:30 normally. Conversely, on the eve of Passover, the prohibition comes into force even during the time that is approximate to Mincha, shortly prior to Mincha. Now it makes sense. Okay, this was a little harder than the last exercise, but if you got it, shake your head yes, please. Okay, most of us got it. But this, my friends, is a classical sugya in the Talmud. We have a question. We rectified the question one way, which would sway the law according to Rev Yossi, making it pretty lenient that you could eat in afternoons generally. And that was the opinion of Reb Huna. Comes Rav Papa and says, no. The law is like Rabbi Yehuda, and the Mishnah could still make sense. Okay. You guys did great so far. Let's, according to our new understanding of Rav Papa, let's fill out the chart on 94. Exercise 3.5. So the question is, may one eat a meal? According to Rabbi Yehuda, on the eve of Passover, could you eat a meal? No. But from what time? 3. Very good. On the eve of Shabbos or other festivals, can you eat a meal? Also no. But from what time? 3:30. Very good. Now, Rabbi Yossi, can you eat on the eve of Passover? Yes. Because according to the simple, and also on the eve of Shabbos and other festivals, yes. Because according to the simple reading of Rabbi Yossi, he's pretty chill, he's pretty relaxed all the time. He lets you eat. We got a little stricter on Passover before because we thought the law was going to be like him and we had to make the Mishnah make sense. But right now we're putting the Mishnah in the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, so Rabbi Yossi is pretty lenient. Is anyone enjoying this, by the way? The intellectual exercise The scholars of the Talmud literally get high off the wisdom and the intellectual satisfaction of understanding things from different perspectives and all the repercussions that come out of each position. Rav Huna, Rav Papa, it's like they walk down the street and their mind is enveloped in the back and forth of the Gemara. If you're getting a little bit of joy, you're experiencing the intellectual joy that a person can get from understanding the Gemara. And it becomes addictive, by the way. You just want more. And then you're not even, the book is not in front of you, but you're walking down the street and you're like, wait, that was the opinion of him, but the opinion of him is that. Oh yeah, now I get it. And sometimes you don't get it and you're just working it over in your mind. And later you're, at the grocery store and you yell, I get it. And all the people look at you and you say, oh no, nothing. I'm studying Talmud. So even if you don't get it now, you might be getting it later because I think you're going to think about this. All right. Wait a second. Hold your horses. The Talmud pulls out a brisa. We found another brisa. And this brisa refutes Rav Papa's theory. I'm going to recite the brisa to you now, page 95, text 8. And then if anyone wants to unmute themselves and explain how the brisa refutes Rav Papa's theory, you're welcome to. Okay, here we go. But is the case that on the eve of Shabbat, eating is permitted in a proximity to the time of Mincha? Surely we learned the contrary in a brisa. There's another brisa that has the same teaching of Reb Huna, but there's more information. Here's the brisa. One may not eat on the eve of Shabbos or festivals from the 9th hour and onward. So they enter Shabbos with an appetite. That's the opinion of Reb Yehuda. However, Reb Yossi maintains that one may continue eating until it grows dark. Go. And raise your hand. Anyone want to go for this and explain the logic? How we just threw Reb Papa's theory away?
Where you had to stop eating at 3, and the new brisa is saying no from the 9th hour, which would have been earlier in that day.
Very good. Rev Papa.
It makes sense to me because if you're going with an appetite, then you'll be more grateful for the meal. I mean, I'm just mulling it over my head too, but I would think that would make more sense.
Right. The brisa, basically, Rav Papa's theory of how everything can make sense is that Rabbi Yehuda normally holds that you should stop eating at 3:30, but for Passover, which, by the way, 3:30 is 9.5 hours from sunrise. But on Passover, he says 9 hours from sunrise, which would be 3 o'clock. And this way, the Mishnah is teaching us something new. That was the theory. 1 second. Is that the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda? That we just found another brisa that says that on Shabbat and festivals, the time of Mincha is the 9th hour. Not 9.5 hours. So that means there would be no difference, according to Reb Yehuda, between Shabbos and holiday and before Passover, because it would always be the 9th hour. And now we have a problem with the Mishnah. What's it teaching us? It's not teaching us something new. And we found the proof in this brisa that someone dug up. The brisa was some scraps of notes on this teaching with a little more information. It specified the time, 9 hours. Not 9.5 hours. So Rav Papa's theory is out the window that the Mishnah follows Rabbi Yehuda. So who would the Mishnah follow now? Reb Yossi. And now we have to go back to Rav Huna's theory. Remember Rav Huna's theory? What was Rav Huna's theory? That The Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Yossi says, all year, Shabbos and holidays, you could eat in the afternoon, but on Passover, you can't eat. That's where we're holding again, because we pulled the rug out from under Papa's theory. Let's do the exercise now based on this new found brisa. Page 95. The question was, may one eat a meal? So now, according to the new brisa, we have new information. According to Rabbi Yehuda, on the eve of Passover, could you eat a meal? No. From what time? 3 o'clock. Good. How about at the eve of Shabbos and other festivals? No. At what time? 3 o'clock. The brisa says 9 hours after sunrise. Okay. Wow. Now everything keeps changing. Okay. How about according to Rabbi Yossi, on the eve of Passover, can you eat a meal? No. On the eve of Shabbos and holidays? Yes. Hopefully you fill that in. Okay. Looks like you could have that you could have that macaroon and coffee after all. Well, not macaroon, to be specific. You could have a day, because before Passover you can't. Rabbi Yossi says not before Passover, but before Shabbos you could have a little bowl of chicken soup at 4 o'clock. No problem. Okay. Good news. The law is like Rabbi Yossi. Whoa! Comes along Mar Zutra, another Amora, and says, hold your horses. Give me that brisa. Let me see it. Where did you find this brisa? Did you verify that it's real? Do we know it's an authentic brisa? You gave me a scrap of paper. It's not a Mishnah, it's a brisa. Brisas need to be verified. Did you verify it? Prove to me the brisa is real. And if you can't, I'm not listening to it. According to Mar Zutra, he's disqualifying the brisa, which now means Rav Papa's theory should stand. Let's read this. Text number 9. But we need to, okay. Mar Zutra says, who can tell us whether this brisa is accurate? Perhaps it's erroneous. I don't know. You gave me a brisa that says 9 hours after sunrise is what Rabbi Yehuda holds. Maybe it said 9.5, but it got scratched off. Maybe he was copying notes from his friend and he forgot to put the 0.5 in. You ever copy notes from your friend for a test because you missed a class and you're like, hopefully most of this information is true. I don't know, but it's better than nothing, right? Well, maybe that's what this is, this brisa you found. It's not verified. So maybe the law should be like Rabbi Yehuda. We're not done, my friends. Comes along another Amora, and his name is Maimar, and some say his name was Rav Yamar. He responded the following: I visited the public lecture of Rav Pinchas. Okay, don't mess with Rav Pinchas. Rav Pinchas is an authority. Son of Rav Ami. There a reciter arose and recited this same brisa in the presence of Rav Pinchas, and he accepted it. He didn't question it. If so, we indeed have a difficulty with Rav Papa's suggestion, and so Rav Huna's answer is therefore more plausible. Saved by Maimar. Maimar to the rescue. He came running in. He says, yes, I could verify. I, with my own ears, heard that Mabraisa once said in front of the famous Rav Pinchas. And he's an authority. Don't mess with Rav Pinchas. Everyone knows Rav Pinchas. And he accepted it. Oh, so the Brisa now disqualifies Rav Papa's theory. Now we go back all the way to Rav Huna's theory, and the original theory stands. The Mishnah goes according to who? Rav Yossi. And the law should be before Shabbos and holidays you could eat in the afternoon. And the Mishnah now is coming to teach us something new, that before Passover you can't eat. Siman tov, u'mazel tov, u'mazel tov, u'siman tov, siman. Ladies and gentlemen, you just completed a real sugya in the Talmud. I hope I didn't lose you. But if, as we say in Yiddish, you were halting cup, which means you held your head through the process, you just experienced a full Mishnah. Let's go back. What's the law now? Page 97. I'm going to skip one of the exercises. Page 97. May we eat a meal? According to Rabbi Yehuda, on the eve of Passover, could you eat a meal? No. From what time? 3 o'clock. Still at 3 o'clock because of that brisa. The eve of Shabbos and holidays, could you eat a meal according to Rabbi Yehuda? No. From what time? 3 o'clock. Very good. Before Rabbi Yossi, before Passover, could you eat a meal? No. But before Shabbos and Yontif? Yes. We just went through 6 back and forth questions and answers. I know it's hard to follow, so let's make it a little more fun. Look at the screen. We're gonna do a ping pong match. Here we go. By the way, I'm not showing you this because I think it makes it more complicated than it is. That's why I'm skipping all this. And the other rabbis who give this course said the same thing. No offense to whoever put that together, but that was really confusing. Okay. All right, the tennis match. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, no eating before Mincha and Passover. That's the law. But does the law follow Rabbi Yossi or Rabbi Yehuda? So look at page 98. You could follow along. Who does the Mishnah follow? The problem. It seems like we don't know who it follows. The Mishnah seems to say Passover is different from Shabbos and the other holidays. This doesn't accord with Rabbi Yossi or Rabbi Yehuda. So who teaches us the Mishnah? All right. Rab Huna shows up and says the Mishnah is like Rabbi Yossi. And if the Mishnah is like Rabbi Yossi makes a distinction between Passover and other holidays. He agrees that there being a prohibition just for Passover. Mishnah is like Rabbi Yossi, according to Rab Huna. Rab Papa comes along and says, no. I think the Mishnah is like Rabbi Yehuda. Yeah, so what's the Mishnah teaching us? Oh, Rabbi Yehuda distinguishes between Passover and other holidays. The prohibition starts earlier on Passover. We said not from approximate to Mincha, but from, not from Mincha, but approximate to Mincha. Okay, so the law is like Rabbi Yehuda. Wait, comes along. The Gemara, we found the Brisa. And the Brisa says something that disrupts Rav Papa's theory. The Brisa says the prohibition for all the days starts at the same time for Passover, 9 hours, which would be 3 o'clock. And Passover, and Rav Papa's distinction doesn't hold up. We must assume Rav Huna's interpretation is correct, which means the Mishnah follows Rabbi Yossi. Wait. Maybe the Mishnah does follow like Rabbi Yehuda, because who says that brisa is legit? You found a scrap of paper. It's a brisa. How do we know it's legit? Wait, comes along Maimar to the rescue. He says, I actually heard that brisa being said in front of Reb Pinchas, and Reb Pinchas validated that brisa, that Rabbi Yehuda believes always the 9th hour, meaning 3 o'clock, so there's no distinction between Shabbos, Yom Tov, and Passover. So we must say, since the brisa is legit, we must say the law is according to Rabbi Yossi. Mazel tov. Game over. Oh, I'm going to catch my breath. Hey guys, any questions, complaints, suggestions? How we doing? You want to know?
How old are the yeshiva boys that learn this And perhaps if they added some spelling of the different words and somehow got some math in there, the situation in Williamsburg now could be solved if they could put it all together, because they say the yeshiva boys aren't learning enough, English and math.
So that's a very good question and a point you brought up. In the Talmud, there is complex mathematical equations. Like here, you already see talking about this, the 9th hour, 9.5 hours, 2. You see it here a little bit, but in some, it's everywhere. It's complex. You need to know advanced math to understand Talmud. The Talmudic, and the children start Mishnah in 3rd grade or 4th grade, and they start Talmud in 6th grade from the age of 11 or 12. Normally about 12 years old, you're starting Talmud. This exact kind of, this is not advanced, what we just did. This is 12-year-olds are learning in yeshiva. And it gets a lot more complicated than this. And it goes back and forth for pages, and you could be dizzy by the time. These kids that go to yeshiva and learn Talmud for hours each day, many of them are brilliant. In fact, the law schools have already figured out that anyone with a yeshiva education could, even if they don't have a high school diploma, they go get a GED and they could go straight into law school. So my brother-in-law went not just to a yeshiva, but he chose, like I went to yeshiva that had secular studies, but like you brought up, Sandra, some yeshivas don't have secular studies. They learn Torah all day. He went to one of those. He didn't have a high school diploma. He took his LSAT. He got a crazy mark and he got a scholarship to GW without a high school diploma. He went and got a GED because they recognize in law school only, not for if you want to be a doctor, a nurse, an accountant, this won't help you. You need to go to regular college and you need a bachelor's but if you got a yeshiva bachelor's degree, you can walk straight into law school. You just need a GED. And he got a scholarship from GW law school. And I know that when Mashi went to law school from Rutgers, they give an award at the end of the graduation to like the best student in the whole school. Surprise, surprise. It happened to be like a religious guy from Lakewood who is like married with like 4 kids and decided after trying different jobs, he wants to do something a little more lucrative. So he went to law school. He got a scholarship and he got the top award. And the second to top award was another yeshiva guy. That is because at the age of 12, you're doing this kind of exercise, and the minds are powerful. It develops powerful minds.
I'd like to tell a story on the same thing. I'm a CPA.
Okay.
For the last 4 years for Shavuot, I've been giving a teaching on the Jewish calendar when we add in an extra month, how long the months are when we do the Molad and so on. It took me a lot of studying to keep up with what these people were doing 1,000 years ago without computers, and I'm a CPA. It's complex math.
Yeah. Yes, that's a great example. That the calendar is really complex because there's 11. A lunar year is 11 days shorter than a solar year, and so every 3 years or so we lose a month, and right. So there's a whole study like that, right? So I went off topic for a minute because this is a fascinating thing. Now that we're like getting into Talmud, and I still want to conclude with one more idea that we're going to cover, but I just still want to say. The school system that is harassing the yeshiva system and the very Haredi, look, that's not my view. I'm very worldly. My kids are worldly. We have access to the internet. We're not living in the bubble like other Hasidic groups. Chabad is very worldly. Their religious belief is to live in the bubble, and if you're in their world, it's beautiful. But the school systems in New York are like suing the yeshivas and driving them crazy, saying, you're producing dumb people or teaching them only ancient religion, da, 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 da. These young people go into business. They don't go college degrees, so they go into business. They buy real estate. They open a bit like real businesses, schmatas thing. They sell Amazon, and a lot of them do really well. And they contribute to society, and they give jobs. Some of them give jobs to hundreds and thousands of people. Yes, there's a lot of poverty as well, and that exists in every community. But I would say they're a lot better off than most people when it comes to education. My opinion is they should have secular studies, but my opinion is also the harassment that the Board of Education does to the yeshivas is misplaced. And it, I believe, has other agendas really to secularize these communities, and these communities feel that it's an infringement on their religious rights. So, we studying the Talmud, they're doing this at 12 years old. And then when they're 15, they do it from 8 in the morning to 9 o'clock at night. These yeshiva students are the sharpest minds you'll ever see. And they've been doing it for generations. And this gift of Talmud is available to everyone. They have the Talmud in English. I hope some of you are going to actually get a volume in the English Talmud, order one, and start studying it, because you'll enjoy it. You'll get into it. You're understanding what a brisa is. You understand what a Mishnah is. You know what a Tana is. You know what a Namora is. What is a Sugya? You know what a Sugya is. You'll learn about the Diuk. You have the tools. You could really appreciate this. And you could develop a love for it. And even if you don't, at least you could get, by this course, you're getting an appreciation for what Talmud is. And just to circle back, people pull a conversation out of the Talmud. One rabbi said something, over a 500-year span, and no rabbi agrees with that opinion. It was just something that was said, but people take that line. It might even be something disparaging about some group or someone, and they say, this is what Jews believe about non-Jews. What are you talking about? Someone said something. No one agrees with that. But it's a free conversation. We have extreme right rabbis like Reb Yehuda, very strict. We have very left rabbis like Reb Yossi. Different rabbis are going to say things. We can't erase anything from the Talmud, because then we need to know the back and forth. But you can't take a line from the Talmud and say, this is what Jews believe. That's ridiculous. It means you have no concept what Talmud is. Okay, guys, I'm going over the time. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to try to do it quickly. And this is beautiful. This is a beautiful idea. Text number 11. For 3 years, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel argued. These claimed the halacha is in accordance with us, while these claimed the halacha is in accordance with us. Don't forget, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel are Tanaim in the times of the Mishnah. The Mishnah is like, you don't mess with the Mishnah. That's like the official written oral teaching. It's not a brisa, which has that we don't necessarily know if it's valid. A Mishnah is valid. Then a heavenly voice emerged and declared, these and these are both the words of the living God, and the halacha is in accordance with Beis Hillel. Apparently, a heavenly voice says we rule like Beis Hillel. But you should just know that both opinions are valid. Now, what is that supposed to mean? How can two people be right? Like my joke from last week. Rabbi, you said the husband's right and you said the wife's right. How can they both be right? The rabbi looks at the secretary and says, yeah, you're also right. How could they both be right? And the answer is, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel didn't just give opinions based on what their feelings were. They understood the tools, and then we're going to do this in the next few classes, learn what the tools are. There are logical tools that could be applied to the Torah, which give us ways to decipher laws in the Torah that are not actually written clearly. When one word is written next to another word, we'll learn about those rules. because Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel used the tools of oral teaching that Moshe gave to us from Hashem, they're both the word of God. And for 3 years, Beis Hillel did they did it the opposite way, the wrong way. Because later we found out Beis Shammai was right. Does that mean that they didn't fulfill God's will? Until there was a vote, and we go by the majority. At the end of the day, it always goes by majority. Till there was a vote, Beis Shammai's congregation was doing it right. It's still the words of God, because they used the tools of the Talmud that God gave us. Now, if Rabbi Rappaport shows up in 2025 and says, hey, I got another theory, maybe we should put the mezuzah on the floor, not on the door post, I don't know. Rabbi Rappaport's theory is worthless. I'm not a Tana. I didn't live at that time. I can't add to it. But at the time of the writing of the Mishnah, a real Tana's teaching was a valid opinion, even if the law didn't end up following the Tana at the end. And my friends, it gets a little deeper. And for this, you got to open your soul for the Kabbalah of Judaism. I'm going to teach you another law. And then we're going to realize that sometimes when you have two opinions, it's not only the practical opinion, but we could look into each opinion and learn a deeper lesson about life. Text number 12. Rabbi Yehuda said that the destruction of chametz can be accomplished only through burning. However, the sages says that we may also crumble and cast it into the wind or drop it into the sea. Okay, we all know on Passover, a Jewish person is not allowed to eat bread, chametz, but also you're not allowed to own it. Someone once asked me, Rabbi, can I feed my animals not kosher food? I said, your animal doesn't have to keep kosher. Your animal could eat a cheeseburger, it's okay. There's only one time your animal diet is restricted by the Torah. That's on Passover, because on Passover, not only are you, as a Jewish person, not allowed to eat bread, we're not allowed to own bread, and we're not allowed to even benefit from bread, which means I can't even feed it to my animal. So what happens if after the Seder, your kids, or after in the middle of Passover, your kids go to play a game of Monopoly, and they open the box, and oh my gosh, in the box is a piece of sourdough challah that one of the little babies put in the box, and we didn't. Now I have bread in my house. What do we do? So the law is you're not allowed to own it. You got to get rid of it. Can you throw it in the trash? No, it's in the trash. It still exists. It needs to be destroyed. Two sages debate on what does destroying mean. Rabbi Yehuda, by the way, remember Rabbi Yehuda is a strict guy. So over here he's strict too. He says you got to burn it. Burn the bread. You got to burn it where there's nothing left. There's no crumbs left. It's nothing left. Hold on, relax, chill out. The sages, the bunch of sages, rabbis, they were called the sages. They said, no, you could crumple it up and make it into crumbs and throw it on the beach in the air, and you got rid of it. You don't have bread anymore. Relax, that's enough. By the way, I believe the law is like the sages. Two opinions. Text number 13. Now we're going to learn a more Kabbalistic teaching on this law. So you're going to realize how the laws have many layers. Rabbi Yehuda's view that the destruction of chametz can be accomplished only through burning is intended to emphasize that the destruction must involve the obliteration of the food's very substance. Conversely, Reb Shinemon, or the rabbis' view is that merely destroying the food's quality constitutes a valid destruction. And the Kabbalists say there's something deeper being discussed here, and has nothing to do with Passover. It has to do with today. And it has to do not with 2,000 years ago, but today. Each and every one of us have to deal with chametz, not in our cabinets, but in our mind, in our behaviors, in our heart. Somehow we accumulate leaven, which is like the ego, right? The rising of the ego, bad habits and unholy activities that we get involved in our lives as human beings. And how do you get rid of it? Do you need to purge your personality and like reinvent yourself? Do you have to like burn your personality down to the core? Or is it enough to just crumble up your ego, but still have the crumbs exist? I'm not going to get into it now, but this is some food for thought. Rabbi Yehuda says, you gotta reinvent yourself. You gotta burn everything, every vestige of who you were until you return to God. You gotta burn that. Nothing could be left of who you are when you want to go on the right path. The sages say, no. You have to just reconstruct yourself into a different form. Who's right? They're both right. There are times that we could just reconstruct it. Most of us don't have to obliterate who we are when we want to go on the right path. We have to reconstruct ourselves. We don't have to burn our personalities. You have a teenager. The teenager gets mixed up with some other friends. They start doing unhealthy activities. The parent's very worried. You have two options. I'm just giving one application. I don't even know if it's valid, but I'm going to try my best to give an example of what I think the Kabbalists are talking about. So two options. One parent might say, you know what? My kid, I'm taking away their phone. I'm locking them in the house. They're grounded for the next month. They can't read what they read until now. They can't go anywhere. They can't do anything. We're burning who they were. We're starting again because this kid's off the path, needs some serious help. Another parent says, no. I'm going to restrict the phone from calling certain numbers. I'm going to let the kid have the phone. I'm going to let the kid go to school, but I'm going to now say after school you have to come home and you can't go to friend's house. I'm going to reconstruct the kid. Who's right? So the answer is it depends. Probably in a regular situation, the law is like the rabbis. In a regular situation, you got to do things to reconstruct your kid's schedule to get them on a better path. Then there's the kid who's now hooked up on some serious, dangerous drugs, involved in some serious, dangerous crime. This kid, you got to treat a little different. This kid, you got to put him in rehab. You got to take away his phone, take him out of society, lock him up in an institution for 2 weeks with doctors, with professors. You got to burn everything the kid became and start again. Who's right? They're both right. It depends on the situation.